So it has been a hot minute since we've done this car last.
Minute.
Well, okay, so it's been what, 3 months? 2 months?
Something like that.
Yes, this is going to be episode 666 because this car is giving me absolute hell trying to get a blow-off valve to work on this diesel. You should have cleaned it before we started the video.
Oh.
It's late. But that's alright, guys. We're going to try and get this thing working today. Me and Liam reckon we've got it sussed, don't we?
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with what we're doing different. So last time you were seeing some super bad footage of us trying to get it to work with this valve here, which is a 2-port valve, in and out, very simple, on and off. So we're changing it to 3-port. And what we think was happening was we were releasing it to vacuum, it was opening up, the spring would close, and because there was nothing to put air back into the line behind the blow-off valve, it was just completely staying shut. So regardless if you try to open up again, it wouldn't work. So it would work the first time and never work again, unless you turn the car off. With this, we can actually feed boost back into the back of the blow-off valve, and when we open up, it shuts the boost side off and opens it up to vacuum. So that's the plan. So that's what we're going to do. Now, for the turning on off, we're using this valve here.
We're not using it.
We are using it.
You said we're not.
I think we are. I think we are going to use it. This is a micro switch, and we're going to be putting this behind the clutch, I believe. The only reason we're not putting it behind the accelerator is because we would need a timeout system. So obviously you put your foot down, take your foot off, and then it would turn the blow-off valve on, but you need it to shut off after a couple of seconds, and we don't have that. So, yeah, let's get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah? Alright.
So first thing is first, let's focus on making a mount for the 3-port Mac valve. So now, you can actually buy these with a bracket, but to save some money, we are just going to make our own, out of some scrap metal that we had laying around. And to stop any unneeded vibrations, I've just added some padding on the back of this bracket, and then we're mounting it up in a clear space away from any water.
Alright, so we've got this bolted up, looking good. As you can see, I've just dummied up the line, so pretty much this is how it's going to work. You got your blow-off valve. There's a diaphragm in there, and we need to keep boost pressure on that. So what I've done is I've connected number 1 to number 2. So if you have a look at the solenoids, and that is the boost pressure side. Comes here, boost pressure from there, from the intercooler, comes here, goes through the valve, goes up into the blow-off valve, and then you got your pressure. Next thing that's going to happen is we're going to activate it by a pedal, and then the boost side is going to get capped off. The vacuum side, which is here, is going to connect up, and then the blow-off valve diaphragm is going to have vacuum. It's going to open up. Perfect. The spring closes behind. The switch is going to be changed again, so it's going to be turned off and it'll return back to boost, putting boost pressure back onto the blow-off valve. And that's what we're going off. Where before, all we were doing is we just had vacuum and then nothing. And the line still had vacuum in it, and that's why it never was reopening after the first go.
Now this all sounds simple in theory, but getting this to work means we need to connect some power up to this solenoid. So I've found a hole in the firewall and I'm running the wiring through it. For some extra protection, I've also found myself a grommet, and I'm going to cover the wires with some heat shrink. I thought this would be pretty cool to show you guys the internals of a micro switch that we will actually be using. Now depending on the terminals, you can have the circuit always closed or always open. We are going to have it the latter, and we are going to have it always closed. Now we need to install this, so that means we need to pull out the paneling of the driver's side. Once everything is out of the way, we get to actually testing and finding some wires. So what I have actually done is I've used a yellow wire, and that is connected directly to the battery. So that always has power onto it. What I've done then is connect a red wire, and that has power when the ignition barrel is in the accessories, and the white and red wire both get power when the ignition barrel is in the on position. Now the benefit of doing all this means you can connect pretty much anything up to them. So you can do for trigger wires, you can connect your floodlights, you can connect the radio, your power, to your beer fridge, air compressor, whatever you want, turbo timer, you name it, you can do it to it. So when I was testing the blow-off valve originally, I actually ended up slapping things together to get it to work. And now it's time to actually clean that all up and do things right. Which means I have to undo a lot of my old work, so I'm removing everything out of the way so I'm able to do it right. So something that we're going to do a little bit different is last time we tightened up the micro switch, it actually ended up cracking the plastic. So what we're doing now is we're going to get a little bit of aluminium and make a little plate for it. And that way when we start tightening it down, it's going to spread out the pressure and hopefully we don't crack it. Because we want this thing to be tight, we don't want to move it around. Once we've got it set, we don't want to go readjusting it again. So this is going to be very, very simple. So let's get on to this. As you can see, we are just using some scrap metal to make this plate out of. Now you could use any metal to make this out of. It doesn't have to be aluminium, just whatever you got lying around. Now I'm just using a hacksaw to get the rough shape, and then I'm going over to the sander to get the finer details done. Once I'm happy with that, I then go over, get the drill some holes off, and actually try to install this new micro switch. P-clamps, P-clamps, P-clamps. As you can see, I have put P-clamps everywhere to try and keep this wire out of the way so Liam doesn't get his big foot stuck in it. So you would have seen I've put these everywhere and they just work really, really great, guys. Cheap, easy, and they last pretty much forever. So because I've installed new wires, means for safety we need to install fuses on those wires. But because of most modified cars are going to end up with more than one accessory, I couldn't help myself and I have chosen to install this fuse panel. And I've pre-wired a heap of power wires up to it, which means installing any aftermarket electronics is as easy as crimping on a female blade terminal and sliding it onto the fuse panel. Installing the correct fuse and earthing out the outside and you are done. So what I've done here is I've just made a little wiring harness. Nothing too special, but pretty much we've got our battery, accessories, and on coming down to the bottom here, and they're going to go into the relays, switching on the relays whenever the ignition is turned on. What we've got into the fuse boxes, we've got out of the relay, we've got these all in 10 amp wires, so we can run these all at 10 amp, and then we've run them back up to the top of the dash, so you can hook up, well, you guys could hook up if you were doing the same thing, gauges, neons, you know, whatever you want. More trigger wires, you can do lots of stuff. And this is really, really basic stuff. So as you can see, it's going to be much cleaner than what was there. So now we're just going to put it in. Now because this was a pre-install, slapping it in only takes 2 screws. But for those who want to know, I have used M6 nut inserts on the fuse holder and 1 each on the relays. Once that's all together, I focus on the last section, and that is connecting it all together. So I'm running the solenoid wire up for the P-clamps I installed earlier to the same point as the rest of the wiring. Now, at the moment I have 5 wires that need to be connected, which I'm using 2 twin pin connectors to get the job done. Alright, it looks like it's working, so that means it's time to go out and actually take this for a test drive and see if it actually works. So let's not talk about it, let's go out and see if this thing is actually going to make some noise.
What the? What that? What the massive drop off?
Gee, oh my, what happened?
Thank you so much guys. If you've watched this far, what I've done is I've put a bunch of these wire diagrams here so you guys can actually go through and choose the one that's the best for you. With electronics, there's definitely a couple ways of doing things, so you don't have to do the first example, you can do whatever you want. Anyway, I'll see you on the next episode.